All right. Uh, Welcome. Happy Friday. The first show in a long, long time. My first show in a long, long time. I am joined by Matt Strackbein, if I pronounced your name right. He is known as the Letterhack on Twitter. He is a sketch artist, comic book artist, graphic novelist, and political junkie, I should say.
Yeah.
Why don't you describe yourself to the viewers?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on. STRACKBEIN, STRACKBEIN. It depends on which part of the country my family is from. We always say STRACKBEIN, exactly like Einstein, but the similarities stop there. Yeah, I am a political junkie, but I'm really more of a political commentator junkie. I like to like people will refer to me as a political cartoonist, but I'm actually not. I'll dabble, but there's plenty of those out there, and it would be hard to like break into that. What people aren't doing is making cartoons and comics and drawings of the commentators on a regular basis. And so I do that in order to promote more independent and alternate media as opposed to mainstream media or cable news. Um, and so, yeah, political junkie does apply, but political commentator junkie I think is most accurate. But yes, I'm a cartoonist for the left. Some people say the cartoonist for the left. I like to think there's more than just me and more every day. But yeah, that's you pretty much summed it up. Comic book artist and graphic novelist. I like graphic novelist. I hadn't heard
Same.
that. Yeah.
Well, it's only because I'm generally a fan of graphic novels.
Okay.
I was not a big comic book fan growing up. I mean, I must admit, but I had a collection of comics. Like uh, my my first cousin, my oldest cousin, was a big graphic novel or a big comic book guy, and he used to have like the boxes upon boxes uh, of comics and whatnot. He had all the Marvels and the DCs, and that's kind of what piqued my interest in a way. Just full disclaimer, I'm more of a DC comic person than a Marvel comic. Just
Same. Me too.
yeah, I mean, I I try to get into Marvel, but it's a lot harder. I mean, I have a soft spot for the X-Men, but other than that, DC all the way. I mean, I've become a huge fan of the universe, the cinematic universe. Like I haven't seen all the films, but when I see a film on DVD or something like that, I tend to get it or check it out on the in the local library and just watch it all the way through. And I'm just usually generally impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, more me. I'm more of a graphic novel person. Just also went to I think before COVID, like the last comic convention I went to, I got a few comics. DC Comics got Frank Miller's Sin City. I think it was I forget which one. I think it was like The Long Goodbye. It's
Oh,
the one with the
that's a
character
Dark
Mark.
Horse comic.
Yeah.
That's their longest or oldest independent comic book publisher, I believe. See, it's funny. People will argue about who's better, Marvel, DC, whatever. And I'm like, why would you not read any of it? They're all comics. And yeah, okay, give me options. I'll have a preference.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to discriminate against any of it. Like I'm as big a Spider-Man fan as I am a Batman fan.
Yeah.
I just don't collect all the individual Spider-Man comics, and that's really when you collect the individual issues, that's a sign of an addiction right there because you got to be on it. And there's a lot of like titles that tie in and stuff. So now you got to get all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when you stick to the graphic novels, it really does give you an opportunity to get the whole story one and done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially when it's made as a graphic novel. Like usually the books are a collection. That's why they call them trades. It's a collection of 6 to 12 issues or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
if somebody makes like I made one last year called Milagro, that's just a book.
Mm-hmm.
We did make it as like 3 issues because that was just a good structure to follow, but it's a one and done story. And there could be more, but you don't need anything before or after this to enjoy this graphic novel. So yeah, I hear you. It's fun to buy like a whole book and just read it and not go, well, now I need to score another fix. You know,
Mhm.
where am I going to get the budget for more comics? And now I need a monthly. I'm
Yeah.
currently, I live about an hour and 15 minutes from the nearest comic shop. And so I have a subscription from this place called Atomic Empire out of North Carolina. And it's like every week I'm getting like 6 or 8 issues. And it's a little too convenient for me to just jump online, scroll through the upcoming titles, and subscribe to more.
Mhm.
And so I'm kind of like feeding the addiction right now. I keep, and it's bad when you keep telling yourself, I got to back off.
Yeah. That's what's also kinda like a guilty pleasure. It's
Yeah.
like that's like, what you do to like you said, it's an addiction. Like, do people, like, use the phone, or do they go out to eat a lot or anything? It's like having an addiction. It's like having, like, a passion, and,
Yeah.
like, going out to again, there's also, I myself have a comic book store, a local comic book store, where I live, and I've never been inside it, been wanting to, but,
What? What's it called?
well, uh, it's called Ron's Comics, I believe.
Oh, you
It's
got to
been a
go.
while. Yeah, I definitely have to. I tried when they started opening things back up after COVID, and, the owner was like, "Oh, we're only on restricted hours," so I wasn't able to, and then I just kind of forgot about it, but now I'm gonna have to definitely go because it's, it's my, like, secret guilty pleasure, graphic novels. I mean.
Oh, yeah. And it's the kind of thing you can contribute to. You can make your own. Like, okay,
Mhm,
let's say like you're a foodie and you're really into like different kinds of food.
mhm.
And you're gonna and I don't mean to hijack the show or anything, but
No,
I just talk a whole lot, so cut me off
I
anytime.
mean, no, you're fine.
But like, if you're like, oh, I want to start cooking at home. Well, there is no like amateur version of cooking. That's just bad food. You're
Mhm,
just doing it wrong. It's not going to taste good. But when it comes to comics, there is no scale of there's like mainstream, which you can get paid to do, but there's going to be a lot of editorial control, or there's everything else, which is whatever you want. So
mhm,
your comics can literally be whatever you want. It can be part photograph, it can be all hand drawn, it can be full color, it can be black and white. It's up to
mhm,
you. It could be like a prose with comics like for 3 or 4 pages and then go back to writing prose. It can be whatever you want. So comics is the kind of thing where if you are passionate about it, you can just start making them. And I used to do it educationally. I word it that way because I used them in the classroom to teach with. And
mhm,
then I started making comics as a means of teaching. So this is when I lived in Colorado and I did comics about Colorado history through the folks that put on Denver Comic Con. They were called Pop Culture Classroom, really good nonprofit, very educational. And
mhm,
we started to teach with the comics. And then you would tell the students, okay, see how you just learned from a comic? Well, now you can teach with them. You can communicate your own stories and your own ideas and your own thoughts through your own comics. So now we're going to teach you how to make them. And
mhm.
that was always super fun because kids were like, these are like um, preteens. We're probably the oldest. Although
Mhm.
we did teach adults, we taught inmates.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
impressive.
the Boulder County Jail, a friend of mine would go there and teach them. So and I mean, that was great for them because they could only be in that class if they were on good behavior. So like, when we were teaching the kids, they were like, oh, there's no way I can make a comic. And then we would break it down for them. We'd start, baby steps and we'd show them like the process and no one just sits down and does it. You have to work it out. And then a week or two in, these are like aftercare programs, but a week or two in, they're like, hey, I was at home over the weekend and made a whole comic by myself. And I'm like, get up and share that with the class, and it was a killer because then it's like you can see like when they were making the comic that they figured out how to convey their ideas through visuals but also using words.
Mhm.
And so that model for describing what you're thinking is like perfect. And it's
Right.
ideal for kids who are just getting used to, you know, public speaking or expressing themselves outside of like their immediate family.
Hmm. Yeah, I actually kind of like that about going out and teaching, everyone, whether you say kids, adults, like teach it as a class to learn the art, not just the art, but the value of writing and doing your own comics, like the self-publishing. Because, I mean, you're probably better known about this than I am, but the state of the comic book business, which with the advent of the digital book reading, especially with comics and graphic novels, there's kind of a downslide of people physically going out and getting comics and taking them home and reading them, and the collecting part, what we just discussed. I mean, that's kind of headed towards, as I say, a downside, or downslide, I should
It
say.
dips. Yeah, there are dips. I'll tell you this. I've been hearing that the comics industry, like physical books, are in jeopardy since I don't know, the 80s. It's
Hmm.
not happened yet. I think what's cool is, you know how they said, "Oh, ATM machines, no more bank tellers." Well,
Hmm.
that's not true. It's just an addition. You
It's
still
just
you still
another
have
way.
bank tellers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just another way to get things out faster.
Yeah, and most comic book people, like, this is the real addiction part. It's like you buy the single issues, then it comes back in a hardback, like, special edition collection. You'll buy that. Then you'll get a trade paperback, which now it has, like, a sketchbook in the back. Okay,
Mhm,
well, I need that too. So you've just bought the same comic 3 times. And then
mm,
it comes out in a library edition, which is, like, leather bound in a slipcase. It's the original size artwork. Now I got to have that too. Oh, and they're going to do that for all the volumes. Well, I got to have all of them. So now you're buying the comic over and over and you're spending more money every time.
then you
Then they
should.
have, yeah, and then they have the artist edition where they scan in the original pages. It's not black and white, it's color. You can see the blue line pencils. You can see notes the artist made in the margins. You can see where they used whiteout or taped things onto the page. Well,
Mhm,
now I got to buy that too. And those are usually over $100, right? So
right.
you'll spend like, upwards of like 400 or $500 on the same 12 issues of comic book story in all those different formats. And so, okay, it's also digital.
Mhm,
Well, I can't get to the comic shop today, so I'll download it digitally and read it on my phone or my iPad. But next
mhm.
time I'm in the comic shop, I'll buy it. And you
Yeah,
probably won't even read it. It's got to be there for the collection. You can't
yeah.
miss one issue. So
It's
there's all these
display.
ways. What's that?
I said it's gotta be there for display.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I just think there's all these ways that, you can integrate the digital format in and there's a bunch of reasons why physical comics are or aren't popular at any given time or
Mhm,
doing not as well at retail, but the publishers they took note of this a long time ago and they work with the retailers now. The
yeah.
relationship between comic book store and comic book publisher
Mhm,
is practically symbiotic. It's so vital. And so what
yeah.
they do is they have little comic book conventions where they have retailers come out and the publishers send their writers and artists up on the stage to pitch the
Mhm,
upcoming stories, and then they sit around and get feedback from the retailers and adjust them accordingly. And they say,
wow.
oh, well, our readers are or our customers are reading this more,
Mhm,
so your customers are your readers. That's our business, that's our industry. And
mm.
another thing they do is, have you heard of Free Comic Book Day?
Don't think I have it. I
It's
might be
the
familiar with it.
It's the first May or first May. It's the first Saturday of May every year where the retailers send a bunch of free
Oh,
comics to the comic book shops. And so what they do is, that's a real popular day. It's advertised on the local news and in papers. So what they
mhm,
do is they get local artists to hang out and sketch for customers because there's inevitably like a long line. And the line is this is pretty smart strategy. The line will weave around the store so you have an opportunity to see all this stuff available. And then
mhm,
when you get up to the free stuff, it's at the register. And more often than not, you have a bunch of free comics and you've picked something up, or your
mm,
kid picked something up, So
right.
Free Comic Book Day is another way that the retailers, getting people in the comic shops. And that's the main thing I like about the movies you mentioned as well, is the movies will drive people to comic shops.
Yeah, it definitely. I actually just wanted to clarify. I just googled it. It was Clints Comics. That's in
Oh, cool.
Kansas City, and I haven't been inside again yet because of COVID, but I definitely want to make a pilgrimage.
Do it.
Hopefully before too long, and start kind of looking around, specifically in like the graphic novel area, where sorry, there's housekeeping out in the
No, that's okay.
hallway.
You tell those guys, you go in there and you grab Clint or whoever's behind the counter and you go, this is kind of what I'm into. I like
Mhm,
DC. This was, my favorite DC movie or whatever,
mhm,
or, whatever, right? You tell them what you watch on TV and they'll go, oh, check this out.
mhm,
They'll know exactly what to recommend. And it'll
mhm,
be based on what they've read, what their customers are buying,
mhm,
what's relevant in the market.
mhm,
And, and, this is the thing though, is they'll recommend a lot of stuff, and then you might not buy everything they recommend, but you'll be thinking about it, and
mhm.
then later down the road you'll be like, I'm gonna go back.
Yeah, yeah,
And then now you're hooked, right? Now they got you.
right.
So
It's kind of the similar way with like bookstores, especially used
yeah,
bookstores. I mean, there's like a variety of stuff. And I have to make a pilgrimage to my local half price books because it's a lot cheaper than say at the more well-known national retail places like Barnes and Noble, for example. Like you could find a selection of everything, including comics. And again, I haven't really perused the comics because I'm more into the books, but like versus what you can find, say again housekeeping. I'm sorry.
I
You
can't
know,
really hear it. It's okay.
you know, you can go in and you can get a comic for say 7.99, just throwing a price out there,
Hmm.
versus at a more national retail, you're like paying $18 plus tax.
Right.
So it's kind of like the value goes up and down. I'd rather
Yeah.
buy the cheaper used comic at the local half price than go to the Barnes and Noble.
Well, and outside of the quality of a book, because paper, there's wear and
Paper or
tear, it can
plastic.
get dog-eared or
Yeah.
whatever. The product itself really has no shelf life. It's not
Mhm,
like those stories get bad.
mhm.
Like the
Yeah,
best comic book stories of all time are from like the 30s. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So
yeah.
or the 60s, and so it's not like you can pick up a used book and go. I mean, okay, occasionally there were moments in the comics history where it was like, what are you guys doing? You're just churning these out a little too fast. The quality's not that great, but
Right.
it's relevant to that universe or whatever. So there's an appeal. But more
Mhm,
often than not, you're going to pick up a book that's used or from 20 or 30 years or 10 to 20 years ago and be like, this is still
mhm.
awesome. This is still
Yeah,
great.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, the value always tends to go up as the years. I mean, I also like it when you get some mileage in those books, they tend to have add to the value. Like, you
They
like
do
the
for
one.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like they don't usually like the ones in the silver, in the plastic, in the what you'd call uh the packaging that you're not supposed to remove.
Oh, yeah,
Uh
yeah, yeah. Like
I've
sealed. Yeah.
seal, yeah, that's what I need to be reacquainted with this stuff because I'm familiar with it, but it's
Yeah.
been a long time. It's like the lesson I've learned growing up with my cousin was never reveal it. Never remove the packaging, the comic from the sealed package because it loses its value. So,
Yeah, but they got to be read. I mean,
yeah.
if you're worried about a comic's value, I recommend like let's say you buy something and you go, I think this is gonna be worth money one day. Maybe
Mhm,
it's 50 years, who knows? Just buy two of them.
mhm.
Big deal.
Buy 2 of every
And
copy.
yeah, and then wrap one up and leave it that way forever, and it'll be fine. It'll be pristine. But you got to read it. It's like my brothers and I, when we were growing up with toys, we were like, man,
Mhm.
open that thing up. you know, we're playing with these toys. We're not
Yeah.
gonna. these are not like gonna go on a shelf where we just look at them. We're gonna use
Was
these.
that was money worth spending. That's the thing with me. Everything I buy, whether it's books, movies, you name it, I'm like, "That's money worth spending."
Yeah.
I went out there for a reason to use this object, and I'm gonna use it for the good of for what it's worth, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Um, that's just my attitude towards
Yeah.
this, like, the material possessions that I own, more so now that I'm a little bit older, so, I
Yeah.
mean, when I was much younger, it's like you 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 know the value of it. You're not supposed to, break it, and then it breaks, and then it's like, what next?
Right. No,
You
exactly. Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, that was actually a good start because I had a lot of questions. Well, not a lot of questions, but I had a few like interview type questions. I'm just gonna hold it up as
Oh
I was
yeah.
kind of jotting down. Um,
Hit me.
I guess the first question I would ask you is like, what got you started? Like, what made you want to start getting into the art of like comic book writing and graphic novels and drawing and whatnot? Like, what's your
I
origin story? Basically, what I'm saying.
I had a I had a very strong desire to just mimic what I was reading. So here's how it started. I
Mhm.
was I grew up
Give
in
it to
my
me.
I grew up in my mother's neighborhood. So
Mhm.
one block from my grandparents' house. And they had a long staircase that went up to a door that led to the attic, and I was always kind of terrified of going up there. So then one day I convinced myself just go check it out. You know, I was like bored. I think it was summer.
Mhm. Mhm.
And actually I may have like it was like a sick day for me and I was at my grandparents' house while my
Mhm.
parents were at work. Anyway, I get up into the attic and one of the first things I discover is a box of like Silver Age comics. So this would have been like
Wow.
mid 80s. And then I found it's like Spider-Man #9 in there, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Neil Adams, Superman and Batman and all kinds of like 2 full boxes of comics from pre-1970 and just
Mhm.
like devoured them and just read them all. And right then I was like, I want to draw this too. I want to mimic these. I love these so much. You know, I left them
Mhm.
in the attic. They weren't mine, right? They're my
Mhm.
aunt's comic stash. So I used to draw them all the time on my own when I
Mhm.
didn't have access to them. And so then I became okay, so on the one hand, I could make friends this way. I
Mhm.
could draw pictures of my friends in real time. And on the other hand, I could weaponize that and I could use it to be like, you better be nice to me or I'll draw a picture of you and it'll be messed up. So,
Yeah.
I could mimic their most embarrassing moments or I could draw us looking like superheroes or something like that. And I'd run the gamut. And
Mhm.
so then I developed a reputation for this because I was really fast. And the way you draw fast is like now I draw digitally and I can hit undo. I don't have to
Mhm.
start over completely.
Yeah.
And that helps with the quickness. But the way I drew fast growing up was I would figure out what helped us know who it was I was drawing versus making it look exactly like them. So
Right.
I would get the hat right, I would get the facial hair right, or
Mhm.
whatever it was, right? I would get the height right, something, right?
Yeah.
I would always do just enough to make it obvious that this was this person and this is me and this is them, and then I would draw us in these settings, and we'd be hanging out. It's a Friday or Saturday night. We're all hanging out in high school, doing whatever what you do in high
Mm.
school, and illicitly. And then I would, somebody would be like, "Hey Matt, draw this."
Mm.
Like, wouldn't it be funny if you did this? And I said, "Okay," and I could draw it, and it was sort of like carbon copy your imagination, right? It's
Mhm.
like you
Yeah.
tell me, I'll draw it, and here you go. And so I did that throughout life, and I
Mm.
never really had more of an outlet for it than I do currently online. And so I was on Twitter for a little while, up until about 2015, 2016, and I was
Mhm.
like, I don't know, this is weird. It's very angry, hateful. I'm more often than not contributing to the vitriol. I had just
Mm.
gone freelance after leaving
Mhm.
like a high end corporate job,
Yeah.
and and I don't like this. I don't feel like I have any relevance online outside of just being part of the collective,
The
and
collective mentality of
yeah,
Twitter.
yeah. And so I deleted the account and got off. 9 months later, I got back on after because working freelance, I discover all these podcasts,
Yeah,
all these YouTube shows, and I'm watching the Young Turks, and I'm watching the Majority Report, and all this stuff.
that's the same with me. I mean, I have to mention the Young
Oh,
Turks was
anyway,
my gateway into
yeah.
doing this. So, and then, just building off of, other leftish, like, left-wing shows and kind of what everyone's doing, being friends and being on Twitter and following almost everybody and just building friendships and connections just got me doing this, and
Well,
it's
so
been
that's
going smooth ever since.
well, I think that is true for a lot of people. I really do. I think it's inspiring. It's just like how I started making comics is I started reading comics. And so when you
Yeah,
start watching these podcasts and streamers, you want to try it too.
yeah.
And I encourage everyone to do that. And there's new people every day. I got to tell
Oh,
you.
yeah. Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
But
I mean,
so I was like, okay, I'll go back on Twitter and I'll have relevance in that I will start to promote these voices and the works of people like journalists and
mm,
YouTubers or whatever. I'll start once I watch enough of them and I feel confident that they're on the level and worth
mhm,
promoting. I'll do drawings of them and I'll put them out there. And I would do one-offs and I would do group shots, group illustrations where it was like I think one time I did like 60 of them, and that really
wow,
took off. And that was like that was maybe the 10th thing that I ever tweeted when I
mhm,
came back to Twitter. And then I tagged all those people. And now all the individual people that follow them started following me. And I was like, here we go.
yep,
This is the method. Number one,
this is it.
bring people to these voices through art. Number
Mhm.
two, make it my art, right? Number
Oh, yeah,
three,
yeah,
poach their audience. So now they're finding out about each other's uh viewership, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so the win is to promote the voice. The win-win is to promote the voice and get people to look at my art. The win-win-win, which was totally unexpected, is when these YouTubers and podcasters started to network through my illustrations.
mhm,
That was totally unexpected and maybe the coolest part. This recently just happened where somebody was on the watch list with J.R. Jackson.
mhm,
I don't know if you watched the Pascal show, but he was on there.
yes. Oh, yeah,
And yeah, so he was on there and you know, later we were talking and he goes, I said, "Hey, I saw you on there. That was fantastic. Good for you." And he goes, "It was all because of a drawing you did." And the
mhm,
both of us were in there. And JR found out about me and we connected and we started talking. And then I ended up on the show. And I was like, that's like, that's the coolest thing.
that's
And
just yeah, that's amazing.
yeah, and I've heard people on shows say, "How'd you find out about me?" And they go
Mm,
through a letter hack drawing, and I'm like, "A letter hack drawing? That's the coolest thing I ever heard." Right? So
right, right.
I use the name the letter hack. Like, I'll just like you may know this, but a
Yeah,
letter hack is somebody that writes letters, right?
mhm,
Generally unsolicited opinions about comics to a comic book letter column.
mhm,
And I became very well known in the Hellboy universe as a letter hack. And I was getting published like, let's say there would be 3-4 Hellboy books a month. I have a letter in the back of all of them, right?
mhm,
And it got to the point where the editor asked me to start because he knew I was making comics. He asked me to start making comics about the history of their characters. So then I did a handful of 2-page backup stories for the Hellboy universe.
mhm.
And then I started to refer myself as the letter hack in the hopes that one day I could make a comic about a guy who breaks into the comic industry that way.
Yeah,
There's a lot of famous letter hacks too. A lot of them, they call them hack because they end up hacking their way into the business. But like David,
obviously.
yeah, David Goyer, he wrote Batman. I think he wrote Man of Steel. He was a letter hack back in
David
the day.
Esquire, the
Yeah.
film
Hmm.
director? Oh, yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen I have, of course, just full disclosure, I have Man of Steel, the first one,
Yeah.
and I know people mixed opinions about that movie.
Nah, it's good.
Henry Cavill did alright in that. He did good.
Oh
He did
yeah,
good
it's
in that
great.
film.
Great movie.
Um, I, didn't see it in the theaters, but I actually did see when it came out on DVD because I'm old school. I still like DVDs. I
Me
mean,
too.
I'm up to date with the streaming and everything like that, but I like the movie, and I will also defend, and it's going to be an unpopular opinion. I will defend Batman versus Superman.
Oh, that movie's great. There's
I
nothing
mean,
wrong with those movies. There just
exactly.
isn't.
I mean, that's the other thing is just like if the critics in the theaters they say it's negatively reviewed, if you get like a 1.5 star review online, then it must be bad. I tend to do this thing where I will see a movie, whether it's a DC movie or an indie movie or whatever, and I will come to my own assumption. Like I will make my own assumption based on these films that I've seen. Like for example, I've become a huge fan in the last few years of the filmmaker Kevin Smith. I'm sure you know who he
Sure.
is.
Yeah.
He is, in my view, probably one of the best indie filmmakers out there. I mean, Clerks, the first one, was great. I mean, just
Yes.
the aesthetic of it, the black and white. I mean, the fact that he stayed in New Jersey and filmed the movie in where he worked at that quick stop, that was like one of the ballsiest moves I've ever seen. And of course, you got Chasing Amy and Mallrats and Dogma. He like built this universe that existed, the Viewisk universe, before the Marvel universe, the DC universe, because people tell him like, "Oh, you stole," or the DC, those universes stole from you. He's like, "No,
Right.
I stole from them because the comic universe, they always have that interconnection with one another. Like everybody knows one another, and that's what he took from his films with the Viewer's universe. Everybody from the different characters of the different movies knows one another, and that's that aesthetic of those films. But again, I just had to say it. If you know Forrest Miller, who is a mutual friend, he for who does movie night extravaganza,
Oh yeah.
he knows how big of a Kevin Smith film I am. We did just a while back this summer. We did the first Clerks movie, and we
Oh
talked
cool.
about it. And it was, I
If you
I was just
like
nerding out the entire time.
if you like Clerks, because I feel like I saw these two movies like in the same year, and I was like, oh wow, they're similar but different. Check out. Have you seen Slacker?
Oh yes,
Okay, so
love
those
Richard.
two movies make for a good double feature.
Hmm, hmm.
That's
I
on
mean,
HBO Max now, I think.
oh, I don't have HBO Max, but of course I'm old school with the DVDs.
You
I
got it.
can
No, yeah.
definitely get a library copy. Speaking of getting library copies of comics, I've perused my local library
Oh,
here and
good,
there for,
good.
just kind of little guilty pleasures.
Well, you know, it's cool if you want something DVD, book, comic at a library and they don't have it, they'll get it from another library.
Mhm.
There's a really good what do they call it? Interchangeable or
Interlibrary
exchange.
loan. Yep,
Yeah, yeah,
done
yeah,
that.
yeah. Check that out. And that I encourage everyone to local comic shops and libraries, those are those should be hotspots in every town.
Yeah. I'm actually probably the biggest at one of the biggest advocates you will know of the public library system.
Oh, great. Nice.
Every time something comes up, like in an off-year election, on the ballot, if it's something to do with the libraries, I'm supporting it because I want our libraries to stay open and stay in business, and if there's some financial reason to give to keep the libraries in business, believe me, any way I can, I'm giving it because
Do it.
I just we need to keep those places open, you know? It's just like
Yeah.
it's not, it's just while everything else is going down the drain, either expectedly or unexpectedly, whether we like it or not, we need to keep public places like libraries open for each generation. Whether you're an old school person like me who likes the physical comics and the physical everything, or if you're one of the new generation who likes everything digitized, like, hey, we need to have a resource that isn't online shopping, which I have done, unfortunately. And I've done
Well, yeah, me too.
jokingly more so since we've been sort of in this quarantine.
Well, but the thing I like, think is probably like least appreciated about libraries is they're
Mhm.
quiet. And
Oh, yeah.
and there are very few places in the world where you go in and everyone's just like, "No, you stay quiet in here." Right?
Yeah.
And oh my god, just being in there is just such the environment alone is just
Oh, yeah.
it's a bunch of books, it's nice and quiet, there's usually air conditioning, people are
Oh,
speaking
yeah.
in low tones.
It's
I really
it's heated
appreciate that.
warm in the wintertime, kept
Yeah.
cool in the summertime,
Yep.
and as a college kid, well, college student rather, um, best place to go and study, get homework done.
Yeah.
I've done that,
Totally. Yeah.
and it's not as bad, you know? And it's a safe place too, very safe where I
Yeah.
live.
True.
Most libraries are safe. They should be. We went off on a tangent there. I forgot my next question. Well, I guess, what was it? I guess I should have rephrased this question. As far as your I mean, if you wanna talk if you're comfortable talking about it, like your upbringing and how you got into how kinda your like where you got into the industry and as far as like your personal politics, like how that shaped your outview on life.
Oh yeah.
Life, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
I'm so
Yeah.
horrible
Yeah.
at questions.
No, it's fine. I know
Trying to
exactly
get
what you mean.
I'm trying to get
Um
better at this. Oh.
Well, I don't know how great I am at answers, but I can talk about myself. The
Trust me, I was, like, up all night not up all night, but I was, like, preparing for this all week, and I was writing questions down, and I was just like, "Is this a good question I should be asking or not?" I was like, "Ah, what the hell?" You know?
Yeah, just
It's
I
alive.
mean, when I used to review comics and interview comic creators, and I don't think there are any bad questions. And you know, the only thing I would recommend is have backup questions just in case.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but so when I grew up, it was in Annapolis, Maryland, which is a fairly conservative town. I think
Mhm.
we used to joke that it was a drinking town with a sailing problem. 'Cause there's, like, a bar every couple of feet, and last call is, like, 3 o'clock in the morning, like, it's pretty crazy, so,
Yeah.
um, but it was also a sailing town, but it was pretty conservative. I was raised Catholic. For whatever reason, I was a Republican. I just, um
It's how you
so
grew up.
well, yeah, and so look at it like this, though, because as
Mhm.
far as, like, conservative, like, that doesn't mean what it used to mean anymore.
Mhm. Yeah.
Conservative for me was not deregulation and privatization. It was just smaller government, less it was more like don't be so intrusive,
Mhm.
right? And I thought that big government equaled big brother. And that's just not true now, right? Like
Yeah.
that's none of that made any sense pretty early on to me, but I stayed Republican because I always looked at like local politics. Um,
Mhm.
and this is before I could vote, like I had a picture of Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. on my wall when I was like in junior high school for some reason. Like I was such a dork about it, um but then, the older I got, the more I was like, well, I could care less about politics.
Mhm.
I do not care. But I did when I turned 18, I did vote and I would vote Republican just out of like habit. It
Mm.
was really like not paying too close attention. And I was one of these folks that would tune in for elections like the Super Bowl. Like I don't watch football all year long, but then I sit there and root for one team at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so then I get into, an age where I'm, because I didn't go to college. I got right into the workforce. And
Mhm.
so I was always like in management positions and working my butt off doing different jobs. Like I didn't have time to look at the news or worry about politics at all. I
Right.
would still vote, but then it was just like, well, I've been hearing this name a lot,
Mhm.
so I'll vote for that person, which is just the low info voter. It's the worst thing about voting and democracy, if you ask me. Um,
Yeah.
so then I was up to my ears in this working for this international corporation, which I really benefited from, but it was really tough. And it was like every day in the office and working 20-hour days, not exaggerating. And
Mhm.
and then you end up realizing like, oh, I'm going to get out of this. And that was in 2016. And I was
Mhm.
looking at who the candidates were, and I had all this extra time to like kind of pay attention and tune in for a change. And
Right.
I was like, there's no way in hell I'm voting for any of these candidates on the Republican side. This is horrible. Let me look at who the Democrats have. And I was like,
Mm.
oh no, this is so it's going to be Hillary and Trump. Come on.
Yeah.
Like that's the worst of the worst, right? So
Mhm.
then that's when I was like, what am I missing? Because
Yeah.
this is so crooked, and the fix is in on multiple, like, you'll hear politicians say, oh, it's a rigged election. No, the whole system is rigged. It's
Yeah,
systemically rigged,
absolutely.
if
Yeah.
anything. And so that's when I was like, well, who out there is speaking truth to power? Even though I didn't know the term truth to power at the time, that's what I was
Mhm.
looking for.
Mhm.
And that's when I discovered the Young Turks, and
Mhm.
I was like, progressive. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm progressive. Like I've been a progressive for a long time. Like I don't smoke weed currently, but I smoked weed every day from when I was 13 to like earlier this year. And then I moved to South Carolina. It's not legal. And so I just,
Mhm.
I don't do it. No, and I've never been one of those people that has to do it. It's just, I'll do
Right.
it if I want to.
It's more of a
Um,
habit thing.
yeah. And it never prevented me from being highly productive. Like I'm one of the most obsessively productive people I know. So, and
Yeah.
I collaborate with other people who are productive. And I'm like,
Same. Or try to anyway.
but I still smoke weed, so that means I probably only have 3 out of 4 wheels going. But anyway, so and I am exaggerating a little bit, but the point is that that I have never been the conservative I thought I was, and I was
Mhm.
always a progressive, and I was always into progressive politics, and I was always
Mhm.
into um, speaking truth to power. And that phrase is like, if I could, wear a t-shirt every day with one phrase on it, would be speak truth to power, because
Yeah.
we have to be able to hold those people to account. That's the goal. So that's when I was like, well, I can't register as a progressive, but I can register as a Democrat.
Yeah.
There's still
As
a
an
chance to
alternative.
fight. Yeah, and there's still a fighting chance on that side, and we had
Mhm.
grassroots candidates, and I
Mm.
realized that voting in the primary is key. Like if you
Yeah.
want to get involved in voting, you have to do it from
The
your
grassroots
earliest
level.
opportunity. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to, get money out of politics and vote for people who
Oh, yeah.
aren't being, funded. So now I look at politics as there are people who want to deregulate everything and privatize everything, and then there are people who just want to let the government do whatever they're going to do, and fully
Mhm.
fund them, and let them take money from wherever they want. And all those people who support, liberal or conservative or neoliberal or neoconservative are generally coming from a place where they're just thinking about themselves and their
Mm.
own situation, and not all of us together. And
Yeah.
so I have always been one of these guys. I've run food banks, do a lot of charity work, um, all the things that I stopped going to church when I was a teenager, but all the things that I learned through like church and youth group programs are about helping others, and about taking care of the less fortunate, and protecting people who can't protect themselves. And even when I'm not like full, I'm not super wealthy or well off, I'll still take time to help people who have less than I do, to give what I can. And so
Yeah.
that to me needs to be the spirit of politics. And so that's where I am now. And that's why the people that I draw and the people I promote are coming from that area. And what really gets me down is when people accuse them of anything else, and it's like, well, okay, I mean, they aren't setting out to be saints.
Right.
It's not a full-time job to save the world. It's
Yeah.
their day job. They have a life. They have stuff going on that they don't talk about on air. You have to
Yeah.
give them a break, and
Absolutely.
generally, and like, you tell me who's sponsoring your show. Like
Yeah.
who's sponsoring any of these shows? If you have sponsorship, it's because you have a big audience. So now you kind of owe it to the sponsors and the audience. That can get messy. It's not pure, but it doesn't necessarily taint the overall message that
Mm.
speak truth to power and make sure that there's full transparency on the world, and at least, starting systemically, we can fix things so that everyone has a leg up. Instead of having to pull up your bootstraps, you give
Yeah.
them a leg up.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't any sponsors yet, but,
Yeah,
who
me
knows?
neither.
Who knows? I mean, we're our own people, basically.
You
We're
do
our
it anyway, right?
Yeah, your own grassroots people. Yeah, that's the kinda thing with me, I grew up in a similar upbringing, I left the faith at 17, but I was raised Catholic. I don't practice the faith anymore. I don't go to church. I'm more or less becoming more of an atheist. But, I also had that conservative upbringing. Like, my first real political memory was my mom taking me and, at the time, my 2 sisters to the voting place to vote for Al Gore in 2000. This was,
Mhm.
I was 8 years old at the time. And that
Oh,
was my first real political memory, and I wasn't really into politics much, but I had this insane kind of feeling that, "Oh, everyone else is Republican, so I must be." And, I was because it's the way I was brought up, quote, unquote, when we went to war in Afghanistan, we went to war in Iraq, it's like, "Oh, you must support this war. If you don't, you're, whatever, not a patriot," or whatever that was said. This is me looking back now 20 years with some perspective. And it's like, as I got older and I left that small town, it was more like I started thinking for myself. I started learning more, started, branching out more. And of course, the election of 2008, what we thought Barack Obama was, you know, later came out to be a disappointment. And then, 2015, 2016, the Bernie Sanders and the rise of his political campaign, his presidential campaign, and the people that were my age and my generation, under the age of 30 at the time, like, being supportive of his campaign, that really put me full force into a progressive, left political viewpoint, which I still hold and will very much still hold for the rest of my life. And of course, along the way, I found TYT and a bunch of other, like Majority Report and all these other left wing shows that I'm, fans of more or less, and doing this myself. So that's
yeah, I
kind of
wish
the short, but a little biography. I
would have
could
been
go on
nice to
about
have
it.
it. Yeah, I mean, you know, I left out a lot of details, but I could. It would have been nice to have somebody like Bernie Sanders when I was your age. I'm going to be 48 this year, and
Yeah.
I mean, look at our options. Were like it really was the lesser of two evils every single time. And so
Yeah.
even if I did have a chance to pay attention to campaigns leading up to the election instead of just tuning in at election time,
Mhm.
what? It's like gross and grosser. So,
Yeah.
and then by the time I did pay attention, nothing had changed except that it had gotten worse. And so it really is just, and if I'm looking for a silver lining, I'm grateful that I was that way because now I can kind of identify friends and family who are that way still, and I can,
Mhm.
and like every conversation I have with somebody about politics, you can count to 10 and I've already turned it back to voting in the primaries, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, I think blah, blah, blah. And I go, that's why you should vote in the primaries. Even if
Mhm.
that doesn't make any sense to interject
Yeah.
that line, I will,
Mhm.
because you need to be involved early on. You
Mhm.
can't just let other people decide who the candidates are for you. You have to have a say in that. And if you're just going off like a name you've heard a lot or who you've seen on TV the most, that means that there's probably either some sort of like money backing them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like you look at like Fetterman and Oz right now in Pennsylvania, and a
Yep.
lot of money is going into the Oz campaign. He's all over the new or TV, and so of course he's up in the polls a little bit. And so it's like there it is. People, these are the people who are like, well, I've heard both names, but I see this guy on TV. He must
Mhm.
have more money. He must be better. Money
Yeah.
equals worse almost
Yeah.
every time. And
Yeah.
unless, you could end up with a lot of money, but you got to know where it's coming from.
Oh yeah, I mean, the same could be said for also Herschel Walker.
Oh yeah.
I
Jeez.
mean, oh
Yeah. You
God.
listen to you listen to that guy talk for 2 seconds and
Oh,
you're like, I don't think so.
I honestly have not, and I haven't listened to Dr. Oz either. Uh,
I mean, if people want, okay, I'll throw this out there because I think about this every day.
mhm,
If people want a candidate who's not currently a politician, they want somebody who's outside the system. I
mhm.
say we make Rashad Ritchie president right now.
There we go.
Okay.
There's an
There
option.
are there are people out there who would be so worthwhile and so good and not coming at it from I'm going to do it because this is my party.
Yeah,
So, and I think
yeah,
that's what people want is they want a candidate who's going to fight for them and fight for everyone and not just say this is what my party is throwing out there as far as talking points, so I'll do that.
yeah,
And that's what Herschel Walker is and that's what Oz is and um they're supposedly better candidates because they weren't already politicians. And it's like, well, then why are they talking like politicians? That's
yeah.
ridiculous. Like let's really look for people out there who are truly not already in the system.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing about them having no political, like, background. They're just running for office because they can. That was the same way with Trump. He had no absolutely political background, yet he was this reality TV star, and nobody thought he was gonna get the Republican nomination, and shockingly, he did. Nobody thought he was
Yeah.
going to win the general election in 2016, and shockingly, he did, as bad as that is. And fingers crossed that something happens in 2024. If my prediction is that if Joe can't make it, if AOC decides to bow out, I'm saying it, then we need, third time's a charm for old Bernie.
Yeah.
That's my take, you know?
Yeah, you got to look at the worst candidate and it's like, okay, you say you're not racist, but all the racists love you, right?
Yeah,
There's something wrong there.
unfortunately. Yeah,
And so if you're bringing those people out, that's bad.
yeah.
and so I would like to think that when you look at somebody like Bernie Sanders, you can say he gets a bad rap in the media, but you look at the people who support him.
Mhm,
That's like me.
mhm.
I'm not a bad guy.
Yeah, and, like, I get just getting back to the question of because we both kinda went off on a tangent there,
Yeah,
but, like,
sorry.
mixing no, it's all good. This is live broadcast. Mixing that, element of politics with art as you have so brilliantly done, I should say. I mean, I we follow each other on Twitter, just throwing it out there, and I've seen what you did with, like, those leftist commentator hosts, like with Sam Cedar and Ben Dixon and Anna Kasparian. Just like FYI, my personal favorite is when Sam, your characterization of the guns, the "Suns Out, Guns Out,"
Oh yeah,
where he was wearing with the tank top, and you had him, like, real muscly and everything. I was like,
Thanos.
that is so good. That is so great. You do more of that. Make Sam Cedar a lot more muscular
Oh,
than he
okay.
already
Okay. I will. Yeah. I'll beef him up.
and I'm sure he'll like that too, you
Yeah, why
know?
not? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, also, I forgot to mention it in the tweet, but you also have your sketchbook that,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
is it already out yet, or is it,
Yeah.
it is?
Yeah, you can get it now. I always say just check out my link tree, which is on all my social media and on my YouTube channel, but you can go to the cwsbookstore.com.
Mhm.
CWS, that's Comics Wellspring. And just search the Letterhack. It'll come right up. It's $10, 36 pages, black and white, sketches, inks, works in progress, pencils. It's not necessarily a book with drawings of people. It's a book of drawings. And so, I think people kind of know what to expect, but it's for fans who want to peek behind the scenes and who may like my personal style. So
It's like
it's
The Wizard of Oz. basically. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, totally.
the guy, the wizard behind the
Behind the
curtain.
curtain. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're just
And
you're
it's doing
allowing.
well.
Yeah, definitely. It's like you're allowing the person or the fans or the audience to get a peek behind the scenes of what it's actually like to be
Yeah.
you, so to speak.
And cuz I live stream every Monday on my YouTube channel
Which I have
and
seen, by the way, and
oh,
I
cool.
still
Yeah.
watch, as much as possible when I'm
Yeah, I
not
love
busy.
we have a good time in the chat. It's every Monday night, 9:30 PM Eastern.
There you
And
go.
the replays are always on the channel if somebody can't make it live. But I do try to give insight as to the process and what I'm doing and what I'm thinking and why I make certain decisions. But the book is a good way to just sit with it for a while.
Yeah, and I will also at the end of this, I will link your YouTube in the post-production,
Thank you.
so that way people can go find if they haven't already. I'm sure most, if not all, the folks who know who you are, they see your work and they know how to find you. But if there's a sort of thing of like playing Where's Waldo, so to speak, I'll just link a shortcut into the YouTube description, and then people can just go and enjoy your work. I do have to ask because you did do that recent one where it was just all the leftist host
Oh yeah.
on Twitter. That one was really good, and I have to say, the characterization you've done of myself, that's probably the best likeness I've ever seen.
Oh,
And I was playing where I
it's
was
good.
trying to find. I saw the Twitter, and I was like, oh, he. I saw you tag me in it, and I was like, oh, I have to find where I'm at, and then I DM'd you. I was like, oh, can you maybe show where I'm at, kind of, because I'm trying to find
Yeah.
myself here, not trying to be egotistical, but it's like I just want to see how I look,
Oh
and then you
yeah,
showed me, and I
definitely.
was like, that is a nice likeness. Definitely a
Good.
nice
Thank you.
likeness.
I'm
I
glad you
mean,
liked it. It's
and I'm
hard. That's 102 people, and everyone has to look like them. So I may actually be
right.
adding one. There's somebody who I forgot, and I was like, oh, that they deserve to be in there. But I got to
Yeah.
see if there's room. But whereas I said when I was growing up, I would draw quickly and do just enough to be like, oh, that's this guy. We can tell from he
Mhm.
always wears a hat or whatever, right? Um, so what I do now is I really do try and capture their likeness. Like you said, I really
Mhm.
do try and make it look like them. I try my
Mhm.
hardest. And um I draw digitally now, and so I kind of
Mhm.
have the chance to like get it right. I can
Mhm.
take multiple attempts at it. So
Mhm.
that one was tough. I'm going to be inking that not this Monday, but next Monday I'm going to start inking that on the live stream.
Nice. Are you gonna be, like, coloring it in as well? Or is that gonna be
Yeah.
much later?
Yeah, it's gonna take several parts, but, I'm gonna start with inking, and we'll get to the coloring later, I think. I don't think I wanna do the coloring in pieces, but we'll see.
Right. Well, with a drawing like that, it has to take time because you have to
Yeah.
get the textures and stuff right.
Yep.
I've taken art class before in my life,
Oh,
so
cool.
I know, you get taught the fundamentals of how to draw and how to ink and sketch and whatnot. And I
Yeah.
I got a friend who does drawings, like, he does, like, good caricatures as well, and he's, like, brilliant at it. He's actually a teacher now, so I'm sure
Oh,
he's
cool.
teaching his students here locally how to the brilliance of drawing and painting and whatnot. And of course, also another shout out to a mutual friend who was in that drawing, J. Andrew World,
Oh, yeah.
who's given me like he's been like the best person to like recommend different comic book artists and different
Oh, he's
people like
great.
that. Yeah, I mean
He does
he's
good work too, man.
yeah
His stuff it's so it's like the same but different than mine, and I
yeah.
I really appreciate it for, it's got a lot of artistic value that mine I sorta don't have. I have more of, like, the cartoony, quick one and done.
Hmm.
His stuff it's elevated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you guys. I mean, I hope you don't mind me saying this, and I'm sure he won't either, but you guys at some point should just collab. Just, like, show your different
Sure.
styles.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about collabing. That's like every YouTube person, every Twitch streamer tends to collab these days,
Why
so
not?
it's
Yeah.
I mean, it gets our audiences, to a much higher level.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
just
yeah.
how I feel.
Well, that's why
Alright,
I call it poaching.
there you go. So I'm looking down at my questions. I might skip some of this. We kind of already gone through the whole comic business about it going into like a, as I say, a downside of because of the digitization. So I'm going to skip that one. But I will say, what about your personal taste? I mean, we might have already covered that, but if you want to kind of expand on it more,
Like what I
elaborate a
read,
little. Yeah, like what were your personal taste maybe as a youngster, maybe now, because everyone has their, their inspiration, so to speak.
I will read anything. I'm always attracted to the art first, ever since I
Mhm,
was a little kid. But now it's like I know everyone in the industry, all the ins and outs. Like I can look at a book, see who's on it, and know exactly what I'm gonna get out of it. But
mhm,
I was always attracted to the art, and really as a kid it was about accessibility. So
mm,
I would have to walk 6 miles to my local comic shop, which I would do all the time. But I also had
right.
a 7-Eleven a few blocks from the house with a great spinner rack. Like 7-Eleven had the best comic book offering in the 80s and 90s out of anybody. It was amazing. And so and comics were like 75 cents. So
Yeah,
I would,
versus what they are now.
yeah. And so I would buy, I was buying like Todd McFarlane Spider Man. I was buying Uncanny X Men. I was buying, lots of Hulk, whatever they had, I would pick up. I used to buy Marvel magazines like Nom. I don't
Oh,
know if you ever
never
heard of
heard of.
that.
No, first
Yeah,
time.
it was a black and white comic about Vietnam, but it was like magazine size, so it was
Oh,
larger. It was
wow.
pretty cool. Um,
Nice.
yeah, and so then I got into like reading like Robert E. Howard Conan and Dune and sci-fi and stuff like that. And so I started to kind of look for comics sort of like that, and I landed on Mike Mignola's Hellboy, as sort of like encompasses everything that I liked about pulps, but
Mm,
also Mike Mignola is one of my favorite comic book artists of all time. He did a book for DC called Comic Odyssey that really blew up, Batman by Gaslight that really blew up, um, or Gotham by Gaslight. I don't
mhm.
know why I'm spacing the name now. We've talked about too many different titles, but
Yeah.
but
So
so
many
then I
titles, so much time.
right, exactly. And so then I really got into Hellboy and the Hellboy universe for a long time, and that's all I would collect because I had a tight budget. You know, I didn't budget a lot for comics. And then I got out of the comics or the corporate world, and I had more time and, believe it or not, more money. I made
Mhm.
more money working on my own than I did for a corporation, and worked a lot less hours. But
Yeah.
um, but then over, I guess, over the last 10 years, I've started to go back and buy all of the DC comics that I was missing out on. Plus,
Yeah.
like, mainly, I'm trying to build, you know what I mean by comic book events, like
Mhm.
crisis events.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like, I've been
definitely.
going back and collecting all the crisis individual issues or trades, whatever I can get.
Mhm.
The only one I don't have is 1982 Crisis on Earth Prime, which
Right.
is like 4 or 5 different individual issues that I just have not been able to track down,
They're
easily.
hard to
But
track
I
down.
have, yeah, but I have everything else and spin-offs and tie-ins of all of the DC Crisis stuff.
There.
Besides that, like, I keep telling myself I need to start reading more Marvel, so I just bought the Spectacular Spider-Man Omnibus, which just
Mm,
came out. It's
mhm.
issues 1 through 42 and a handful of annuals. It's, it's a 930-page book or 950-page book or
Whoa.
something. So, yeah,
Wow.
it's one of these crazy, like, huge books, and I have dozens of those omnibuses. So, um, I've just been spending an obscene amount of money on collections. But as far as like my taste, it's the Super Friends. It's Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash. I've always loved them. And then besides that, it's Spider-Man. Everything else is cool. I'll
Mhm.
read it, I'll buy it. I always will, I always have, but it's the main, like, quote unquote Super Friends cartoon I grew up with in the
Yeah.
70s and 80s, and Spider-Man. And
I think
that's really it.
I think I may have seen, like, reruns of that Super Friends cartoon in the '90s, especially with like Cartoon Network. For those
Yeah. Oh,
my
they
age
showed it. Yeah.
who like grew up on old stuff that would see it in reruns, I think I know what you're talking about. And that
It's
could be like,
Hanna-Barbera.
yeah, the Hanna-Barbera stuff is like so familiar to me that I could just go on a tangent about that organization. But
But like, well, think about also like the 1966 Batman show, the TV show.
the one with Adam West.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
Burt Ward. I would get off the bus, so that would come on at 3 o'clock. My
Hmm.
bus would drop me off at like 2:55.
Hmm.
I would sprint home like 3 blocks, hit record on my VHS player, and record. They'd play,
Remember those?
yeah, right, because and so like all the episodes were two-parters. So
Hmm.
they played two back to back, and I would record them all, and I became like a huge fan of that. Like, and this is like junior high, middle school, and
Yeah.
so now I'm like binging the Blu-ray of it. I have the whole thing on Blu-ray. I remember it all very
Yeah.
well, but that was huge for me because that made it feel like real world.
Hmm.
Like it could happen in the real world. Like there was nothing so fantastic in those things. I mean, the traps and contraptions were a little out.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as bat shark repellent, for
Yeah.
example. But otherwise, what they wore and driving around, that was all that was real stuff. It wasn't CGI. And that for me made me want to read comics more because um I could imagine it better because I
Yeah.
had like, it's kind of like having a toy helps you like realize the reality of it. But seeing it on TV that way was huge for me. That was very influential. And
Yeah.
also running home to record it and then watching it over and over until the VHS tapes like wore out.
Yep.
That also was like, um, just helped me realize my passion for it all the way around.
Yeah. And I mean, now what you say with like Blu-ray, everything is just transcribed from that
Yeah.
quality to a better, higher quality, whether
Right.
it be HD or whatnot. And now you just,
4K.
yeah, 4K, which is what I'm broadcasting in. I just upgraded
Oh,
from
nice.
1080p to 4K, and I can
Cool.
actually tell the difference. Still have some little static stuff in the background, but hey, that's fine.
Yeah.
You get what you can, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like the Adam West uh show, the Batman show, like they show it on reruns on like free cable, so that's how I remembered it. Um, and he's also, I think he was a voice actor, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Adam West did the voice of Batman in the Super Friends cartoon. But
Mhm.
yeah, but he pops up or has popped up all over the place while he was alive. He's a real pop culture icon.
Yeah, he did a lot of Comic Cons as well, or are
Oh
they
yeah.
conventions? I
Yeah.
mean, I call them Comic Cons because that's like I said at the beginning, the last one I went to before the pandemic was here in Kansas City, and I got my picture taken with a guy in a Superman costume, and
Oh,
it
cool.
was. And what else? Uh, I went to a panel, and it was a panel of Michael Rosenbaum, Tom Welling, and Dean Cain. I mean, it was a panel of people who did Superman, and I couldn't get a seat in like the front row to see them because I would literally a friend of mine. We were sitting in the very back. All the seats were taken. We were literally sitting on the sidelines on the floor listening to these three like talk about their experiences with Superman, and it was just like, wow. Like I'm more of the Smallville type.
Hmm.
Um, and then it was real nice to see Rosenbaum and Welling in person.
Who's your Superman?
Hands down Tom Welling
Yeah.
for me as a the live action. As far as film, hit or miss. Like I will say Brandon Routh did good in Superman Returns. He not great, but good. That movie is kind of hit and miss with me. Superman Returns from
Hmm.
2006, but like Henry Cavill, who does Man of Steel, or I think he's still doing the character
There's
in the
rumors,
DC,
yeah.
yeah, in the DC universe. He actually was good. He's great. Um, I don't know if you like also the history of Superman, like the developmental process that went between the last Chris Reeve film and then Superman Returns, like all the films that were in development and then
Oh yeah,
they
Nick
fell
Cage
through.
and all that. Tim
Yeah,
Burton's Nick Cage, yeah.
the Kevin Smith script.
Yeah.
Also there was, I think Cable was picked to play Superman in an earlier adaptation written by J.J. Abrams, like a script that was called
Oh,
Superman
yeah, I think I
Flyby,
heard that. Yeah.
and like you can find the script on those fan websites. I sat on my computer in my college dining hall about 3 years ago and read the entire script, and I was like, "This is so good. Why
Oh,
isn't
it's
this
good.
getting" Yeah, it was like, I'm not a huge fan of J.J. Abrams, but, I saw the Star Treks, I've seen Felicity, I think he did Alias, if I'm not mistaken. I might have
Yeah.
to
And
re-look
Lost.
that. Lost, which I'm not a big fan of, but hey, to each their own. Um,
Yeah.
uh, See, now I'm just going all pop culture on you. That's
Well,
th
Christopher Reeves, that's my Superman. I
Yeah,
mean, just
hands
because
down.
that's the first one I ever saw, and then
Mhm.
I had an opportunity to grow up with it before there was anything else available.
Yeah,
So by the time they did any more Superman movies, I was a full blown adult and was like,
right.
hey, whatever they do, fine. I'm not gonna cry about it if it's
Yeah.
not my thing. But
Is the first Superman with Chris Reeve your
yeah,
preference or
I always treat the first and second movie as one movie
Mhm.
because they were filmed that way.
Yeah, definitely, especially with the second with the Richard Donner cut, which is, I think, the true
Oh yeah, yeah,
film.
sure, yeah,
I don't know who the name of the I don't know offhand the name of the director who replaced Dick Donner who did the second Superman, but, like, I've only seen the Dick Donner cut, and I look at that as the true, uh, uh, second Superman film with Chris Reeve. And plus,
yeah.
Margot Kidder is the late Margot Kidder, I should add, is just brilliant.
Well, yeah, and I mean Terrence Stamp as Zod, that's amazing. And
Mm,
again, the movie drove me to the comics, and
mhm.
that's what I hope superhero movies do. Is if it's based on a comic book, I want people to be like, "Well, I need more of this. I'm not going to wait
Yeah,
for the movie again or the
yeah,
next movie, or if they even bother to make a next movie, I'm going to go
yeah,
to the comic shop and buy some of this stuff now." And then, you know, there's yeah, I mean, they've been making Superman comics since the 30s.
mhm,
Like, you're not going to run out of material to read in your lifetime. You know what I always think is unique? You look
mhm.
at something like Moby Dick, right?
Yep.
Everyone knows what that is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And, they didn't serialize it like they did Superman. They aren't putting it out weekly every week since,
Yeah,
it's like on the one hand, okay, yeah, well, whale hunting has never really been a thing after that, right?
mhm,
it's not
mm,
it's not like a thing that, well, I want to read more about whale hunting. But
yeah,
like reading about Superman is compelling, right?
mm.
And so that stuff has stood the test of time and then some. So when they
Oh, yeah,
occasionally reinvent characters or even change them a little bit, people will be in an uproar. And I'm like, yeah, but there's already like 30 years worth of stuff before the change that you can continue to absorb and reabsorb,
mm,
so I just always tell people, like, if you like the movie, there's without a doubt something for you in the comics as well.
oh, yeah. That's the kinda thing with me is if I get obsessed with the movie, I'm always looking to find the adaptation as that sort of comfort zone, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
always have like beef with the term adaptation. Like there's a
yeah,
podcast that I go on occasionally where I'm like, there is no adaptation. There hasn't been one. There's no faithful adaptation. Stop calling them comic book movies. There's either comic book or movie,
yeah,
but I get it. It's
separate the
fairly
term.
harmless. Yeah, it's harmless, and just real nerds, you can argue about that stuff. But for me, it's like they're they're taking they're cherry picking what the movie creator likes about all the different comics and they're putting them into a movie
Mhm.
versus taking like any one story arc and literally adapting that, which I think it'd be cool. Like imagine they did a Spider-Man that took place in 1963 or
Mhm.
62 or whenever the original one took place.
Mhm.
Make it a period piece.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Instead of no, it's got to be present day. They all have iPhones, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
annoying to me. It's like okay, I I don't know. It's and I'm a curmudgeon. You know, I'm an old
Yeah.
guy. I'm like 90 on the inside when it comes to my comics. But like I think that would be unique. I think it'd be fun. The other thing about comic book movies that just because this is just there's so few things that irritate me about them, but
Mhm.
enough with the origin stories. Like
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I was in like the first Tobey Maguire movie,
Mhm.
and I think it was Tobey Maguire. I think so. And there's like a scene where he's drawing his costume in like a
Mhm.
notebook, what he
Yeah.
wants it to look like. And it
Mhm.
had just been a Peter Parker story till then. But then when they show the costume, some little kid in the theater yelled out, Spider-Man. I was like, see, this kid knows why he's here.
Yeah.
Get him on the screen already. We don't need to see all this garbage, you know. Just start off with Spider-Man fighting bad guys and then end it that way. And we don't need to see how it happened. But so
Right.
it's like if you can work it in the story, that's fine. Like you look at Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. That was a
Mhm.
great Bruce Wayne movie. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you get to
Hands
the
down.
part where Batman shows up and you're like, I didn't even need Batman to show up. This was fine.
Yeah.
This was a great movie before this. So it could have just stayed that way. But when it comes to making movies about comic book characters, I really do want them to just cut to the chase. Like we
Yeah.
know Batman's
What
Bruce Wayne.
happened? Yeah.
Yeah, we get it. Come on, let's go. Stop
It,
trying to
it
retell the story from the very
right.
beginning.
Right. It's like it's a money-making repetitive thing where every franchise, I mean, even decades from now, I mean, are gonna be telling the story over and
Yeah.
over and over and
I mean,
over.
if you don't know Superman's Clark Kent, you should be embarrassed, right?
Yeah.
You should be like the one person in the theater going, "What's wrong with me? How come I don't know Peter Parker's Spider-Man? I'm an idiot," right? And then, you know, you're
It's
not,
just like
but
it's a hair pulling thing where it's just like, God, we've already seen, we know how it happens. Like, just as you say, cut to the chase. Can we just
yeah.
make a film where Spider-Man is just beating up Doc Ock or something like that? Like, do we really have to know where he came from? I mean, we already seen it like 20 years ago with the first Tobey Maguire movie. And that, I
Oh yeah,
mean,
and I mean, and before that, and it's just it to me, it's like you got to give the audience some credit,
yeah.
and what is pop culture if not long lasting, right? Like,
Mhm.
come on, and honestly, like sometimes I feel like we live in the Matrix. They made
Yeah.
Superman, Batman, Spider-Man in the 30s, 40s, and
Good.
60s, and
Yeah.
they're still the most popular ones. No one's been able
Yeah.
to outdo them. No
Yeah.
one's they broke the mold. Really, no one's been able to top that. Like,
No
how is
one,
that still the best comics and superheroes are the ones that are the originals? Like,
yeah.
it's such a weird thing, and so to think that people don't know about them,
Mhm.
it's an insult to
Yeah.
our intelligence.
It's like some, you tell somebody who's not a big comic book aficionado or pop culture aficionado in general, you show them a Spider-Man comic or a graphic novel, and they just kind of scratch their head and they go, "Who?" And you're just like
Yeah,
on the
well,
floor with your jaw, like, you
but
cannot tell me
I think
that you don't know this."
I think the biggest misconception non-comic book fans have about comics is that they are not for adults. And they absolutely are, or they wouldn't be that expensive. They're
I just want to say we're getting into Bill Maher territory here.
oh well, yeah, probably. But
Point taken.
if you take your kids to the comic shop and you say, where are the do you have age appropriate comics? They'll show you where it is. There's a
Mhm.
shelf or two, right? But the rest of the store is for people who have full-time jobs and
Yeah.
salaries. And so anyway, they're not just for
Yeah.
kids, but they are, but they're not just for kids.
That's the point. That's what graphic novels are for, sort of.
Right. No, it's true. Yeah.
It's like for me, like comic books are for the kids and the preteens and the teenagers, the adults who love like their childhood, like fantasy and upbringing and whatnot. the graphic novels kind of go that direction. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Sure.
It's like if Bill Maher himself could just see that, but of course he just judges. He's one of those folks who could just judge things before he knows them. It's just
Yeah.
like you just see it. Not
Yeah.
everything, not everybody thinks the way you do, Mr. Maher. Is why you're so
Yeah. Right.
has been curmudgeonly these days. Um, and I
Well, I
don't want
think.
to go on a tangent with him.
Well, I think
Trying not
people
to.
with. I'll just put it this way, and take this from a guy who watches literally dozens and dozens of these kinds of shows, right?
Mhm,
This is the one piece of advice I would give anyone, whether that's an issue with their podcast or not.
mhm.
Spend more time being a host and less time being the authority on whatever you're talking about.
Yeah,
And being a host, whether you even have a guest on or not, it could just be
yeah,
you and your audience, but spend
mhm.
more time being a host and conveying rather than being the boss of it all. And
Yeah,
I don't see that a lot. But like you look at somebody like Bill Maher, it's like, okay, just because you're the guy with the platform means that you know everything. There's no way that's possible. That's
Mhm.
silly. So
mm,
anyway, that's the one thing that I would say, just blanket across the board, even with myself. Work on being more of a host and less of the boss of it all or the
yeah.
authority on everything.
Hey, better, point well taken there.
Yeah.
I mean, I only do stuff like this part-time, so, I'm uh, not really I'm just now getting my feet into the water. Um, I'm a
You gotta
college
start
student.
somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a college student, so I really can't commit to this full time until after I graduate and get my degree, and then I can do this hopefully as a career where it'll for sure take me somewhere,
Well, you
someplace,
can
you
hit
know?
the ground running too. Get a lot of this stuff worked out in the meantime.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Let me look back at my list here, because okay, how much more time do you got left? I'm just
I'm
kinda
good. I'm good.
You're good? You're good? If you ever need to, like, just let me know, say, "Hey, we're gonna wrap it up because I gotta go to do this."
Uh, well, if it ends up we're still going at 1 o'clock, I should bail. But otherwise,
Okay. Um, so we already talked about your personal style of art. I mean, that kinda ties in, like, your taste kinda ties in with the personal style.
mhm.
But, I guess I would kinda just ask, like, how do you kinda get your day feel when you when you do a sketch or, like a drawing, a caricature of someone like Sam Cedar, like we just mentioned, or Rashad Ritchie or Anna Kasparian, or of that big group portrait, I should say, of everyone, like the steps you take, so to speak, to complete that or try to get it completed.
Well, if I'm doing something in real time, like if I'm drawing something that I just saw on the Majority Report and I want to put it on Twitter before the show is over,
Hmm.
it'll be the most down and dirty process. I will just open my iPad, make a new document, and start drawing and not even really think about it.
Hmm.
And more often than not, somebody will say, "Oh, you should have done this." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, if I thought about it a little bit more, maybe I would have." But this
Yeah.
is like down and dirty, right? Hot off the press, no thought behind it at all, just one and done.
Hmm.
Now, it's something else like that portrait I did with all those people, which I call spectators. I worked on that for a long time. Um, yeah, if I broke it down into hours, I'd say probably 40 hours just on the pencils, the
Hmm.
layout and the pencils. Like who's going to go where, who's doing what, is everyone the right scale?
Hmm.
Um, I have some people in that who are paying attention to whatever they're watching, and some people who are reacting. Some people are overreacting. Some people are taking selfies. Some people are looking off in the wrong direction from everyone else. And so I really put a lot of consideration into that. I took suggestions from people on Twitter, so I was constantly adding people and moving people around. And that starts off really messy and just with me like holding my iPad like super close,
Hmm.
like this, like hunched over for, hours at a time, and then getting up, doing something, coming back, looking at it, making a quick change here and there.
Hmm.
And then I get to a point where I'm like, okay, this is basically it. now I have to refine it. Now I have to make it look good. And so
Mhm.
what I do is then that's when, in my mind, that's when I'm really drawing it. So
Right.
there's this whole massive process of figuring out decision making, trial and error, fits and starts. And then I get to a point where I'm like, it's either I start over on all that or I move forward. And that's kind of the easy part, because then I have this moment where I let go. And
Mhm.
I know that it is what it is now. It's not my favorite expression. It is what
Right.
it is, but it isn't any worse than it is. You know what I mean? So I move
Yeah.
forward with it.
Yeah.
Um, but if it's one person or one scene, or I'm parroting a comic book cover or something like that, then and this is true when I draw people like for likeness, is I really do like find the right image of them, or I have to be watching them live on stream or something. And so I
Mhm.
can constantly look at their face. Just like a
Mhm.
portrait artist would do, is you need a reference. And so I need to be able to see them with mannerisms and
Mhm.
expression. And then I would never do like a driver's license as a reference image, They have to
Right,
be
right.
they have to be animated, they have to be in the moment somehow, and generally doing what it is they do. So if I draw Emma Vigeland, she has to be on the Majority Report hosting,
Mhm.
or if I draw, whoever, they need to be in their environment doing their action. Um,
Right.
and then I feel like I can spoof them. So if I was going to
Right.
draw Sam Cedar as a superhero, he
Mhm.
should look like he does on the show as a superhero. That way people not only recognize him, but they know him.
Yeah.
They know that's him.
Definitely.
So I try to build in that sort of a layer. Like
Right.
um, when I draw anything comic book related, unless it's
Mhm.
100% original, I'm
Yeah.
always sort of spoofing something that's already out there. And so
Yeah.
that way people activate their sense memory, even if they don't realize it. They already know what it is they see. They already recognize it. They've already registered that this is for me. This has an appeal, and I don't necessarily know why, but I'm going to look at it. I'm going to hit like, or I'm going to retweet or whatever.
Yeah. I just have to say, you got me really good with your caricature of me. I'm glad because if you had seen me 10 years ago, I had real long shaggy hair, and that would have been
Oh,
just a
yeah.
process of a really long process to kinda draw
Well,
that
that
likeness.
happens. Like, okay, so like I'll be drawing somebody for years and then they go blonde. And I'm
Mhm.
like, how long are they going to keep that?
Yeah.
Should I draw them blonde now, or should I just draw them how we all like? And so what I do then is I go off of whatever they're using for like marketing promotion. And it's like, well, if they haven't, like, so Sam Cedar grew a beard and started wearing clear framed glasses. And
Mhm.
I was like, well, do I draw him that way now? And then when he shaves, draw him clean shaven? Like,
Mhm.
this is awkward. And so then I just look at all the promo stuff he uses. And it's
Mhm.
still the old school, like 5 o'clock shadow, black rim glasses. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I'll just keep drawing him that way. So I have sort of figured out my version of what people should look like. And like I have my own drawings of them now. So I'll use that as reference versus tracking down a photo.
Yeah.
So like I drew Jordan Yule
Yeah.
in that picture, and he was looking at it and he's like, oh, I have that old Cincinnati hat I used to wear. And I was like, oh, so I was using like an outdated reference from an old drawing I did of him.
Mhm.
And maybe I should update the hat or something, So I don't know. That kind of stuff happens a lot where it's like um accuracy is a choice.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the thing, like, I love not just the caricature of myself, obviously, but, the caricature of, like, all the all the people that I've known equally, that we have known equally. There's the way the technique, if you will, that you've kind of put into the drawing, and the way, like, again, you've studied their, like, facial reaction, you've studied how how their, like, interpretation, if you will, uh, of like, their facial reaction, if you get what I'm saying,
Mhm.
and you put it well on paper,
Yeah,
and
like
that's, like
whether somebody has a wrinkled brow is a decision I make.
Yeah.
Because you know, when you see a worried expression on somebody's face, but they're
Mhm.
smiling,
Mhm.
that could be like, oh, well, I've seen them make that expression a million times, you know? But then you take away the wrinkled brow and it's like, well, now they could just be happy. And
Mhm.
that's more generic, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. So,
Yeah.
so like,
Like,
so like I'll make decisions along the way in term and people love seeing themselves drawn. So I always try and do it like complimentary, which
mm,
is kind of tough with that Garbage Pail Left series I'm doing now because everyone's supposed to look kind of messed up,
yeah.
but everyone's been a good sport about that, fortunately. But you know, it is the sort of thing where I don't want to make them look bad, but not everyone's happy with the way they look.
Mhm.
Like somebody drew me one time; it was very accurate, and I was like, I'm just not that into myself.
Mm.
I can't be flattered by it, you know? You know what I mean? But people are
Yeah,
flattered when you take the time,
yeah,
especially when you're promoting their work.
definitely. I mean, I was. I mean, I took one look at it and I was like I said, that was a good interpretation. That is a good
Okay, good,
likeness.
good.
That is exactly the way I look because, as you age, you start, as you get older, it
Tell me
starts.
about it.
It's a lot harder to draw somebody in the present time because you've got that
Mhm.
vision of what they looked, like I said, if you'd see me 10 years ago with long shaggy hair, it would have been a lot more difficult to draw
Yeah.
than now that I'm 30 and I have, you know, shorter hair and who knows if we're still doing this 10 years from now when I start, getting gray and you're gonna have to draw those like streaks of gray in the hair or streaks of gray in the beard.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got kind of the 5 o'clock shadow. I don't look too bad for my
It
age
I
now.
mean, but it happens. I mean, I haven't drawn anyone who changed their appearance that drastically, and it makes me think that I don't know if they think of it this way, but it sort of
Mhm,
makes me wonder if they do it for branding purposes.
mhm,
Like if you go changing too drastically, people are going to be like, "Oh, I didn't recognize you." When that could be detrimental to your, you know, your streaming service or your
mhm,
show or whatever, you know. So I think it's like I always think of Bob Ross, you know, the painter. He was known for having like a perm, like a big
mhm,
curly hairdo, and he was sick of that almost right away. He did it because it was affordable. He couldn't afford to get haircuts all the time, so he would just do
right,
that. And he wanted to get rid of it, and they said, "Well, no, I mean it's how people know you now. It's kind of trademarked." And so
mhm,
he was like, "Oh no, you're right." So he kept it. But I
yeah.
wonder if people do that. But no one's changed that much.
Yeah, I mean, people still look the same, as they do, a few years ago.
I mean,
Y
Farron Cousins grew a beard, and I drew him with the beard one time. I think it was part of a joke.
Mhm,
And then I was like, "Oh wow, he's keeping that beard." Well, I've known of him longer with the beard than without.
yeah,
So I'll
and hi
keep Farron's beard.
and is he's cool with that? He's, like, looked at the picture and said, "Oh, I like the beard, keep the beard, or maybe trim it a little bit, make me look a little
He
current."
so he's one of the people I draw that seems to be cool with literally anything I do. He is
Right.
so on board. He's like easy, real easy. So I'm sure he would be fine either way.
Who's the toughest in your mind? Like, who
The
who out
only
there has
like
go right
I don't know if people don't want to be drawn. No one's been like, "Don't draw me," you know? No one's
Yeah,
blocked
yeah.
me for it. No,
No.
I haven't heard anyone be upset by it. And actually people who I thought might have said, do me," you know? Like David Packman was like, "Do me." And I was like, "Oh, okay. I didn't think you'd be into it, but okay." Um, but the what makes it difficult is I don't want because a lot of the times I'm doing it in kind of a funny way,
Mhm.
you know, and I'm making
Yeah, in a
like
humorous
there's a
way.
punchline. Yeah, it's humorous. And so I don't want people to think I'm making fun of them. So if I feel like, oh, I'd be friends with them in real life, or I feel like and not in a weird way, like I feel like I know you,
Right.
but like
Right.
I feel like, you know, they're like Jeff Waldorf.
Mhm, yep.
Like I feel like if I knew him, we lived in the same town, like be buddies. I'd hang out with that guy. He seems cool as hell. But
Yeah,
so like I have trouble drawing him sometimes because I'm like, well, he's the last guy I'd want to hurt his feelings.
yeah.
Like and so, you know, I'll go there And when I put it online, I'm like, I hope they are cool with this, you know?
It's like you
So
take a deep breath and you're just like, "Okay, here
yeah,
I go." That
exactly,
enter button,
exactly.
and it's just like, see the reaction I get, you know?
And so like I say, it's always gone over well. I've never had any weirdness, but I do really it's hard for me when I feel like someone deserves more respect than
Yeah.
because look, if you're putting yourself on a YouTube show, well,
Mhm.
you're the one who just stepped in it. Anything
Yeah.
can happen now. People are going to come at you, and you're asking for it essentially. But I feel like if some people are in it with like a deep sense of purity, then it's
Mm.
like leave them alone. And
Yeah.
so I don't want to be somebody who's you know, I don't want someone to interpret my work as like poking fun,
Right.
unless I'm obviously poking fun. Like I'll do something of like Glenn Greenwald, and you know that's not out of
Yeah.
like admiration for him, you know.
You're
So
you're you're doing something of his that what he's doing, like, how he's acting in the current time.
yeah,
So, whatever he's doing now, like going on Tucker or whatever, you're doing a drawing or a caricature of him based on his current behavior.
and also think of this: if I do something and I'm like, oh, this is fine, this is a good drawing, I'm happy with this, I'll put it out there, and then somebody finds something about the drawing to make fun of, they could use it against that person.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of weigh, is this person going to be able to deal with that? Or like somebody thought a drawing I did of John Idarola looked like Bobby Hill one time. And I was like,
Oh,
okay, I can
oh,
kind of see
no.
that.
Oh,
And
no.
well, but John has enough of a he's established
His
his
brand.
reputation,
Yeah.
and yeah, and he can roll with that. He's got
Yeah.
people coming at him left and right. I'm sure he can handle it. But there's
Yeah.
other people where I'm like, well, that could be detrimental to their work.
Mhm.
You know, I don't want
Yeah.
them to lose subscribers or have people not
Right.
subscribe at all because they saw him being made fun of. You
Right.
know, so
You're being mindful of the interpretation of how this could be presented. I mean,
yeah,
I know John's we're friends on Discord and we talk every now and then. Like he's a good dude. I mean, and he from what I've seen, at least in small venue, he's been pretty positive about it and he takes it that it's in good faith as the term is
yeah.
known in the community. It's most people that I've seen, aside from Glenn Greenwald, I mean, are very receptive and are very positive and are just like very encouraging
I
of the
am
work you do.
surprised. I'm surprised I haven't been blocked by some of those guys though, because I'll
I,
go in on people occasionally, and it's like I realize I'm sort of just going after the exact same people every time. And
it, it's all fun. It's all fun
well,
in a
I've
way.
seen them block people for a lot less. So
Mm.
I maybe I just haven't hit the right chord.
It's like, yeah, it's like really simple because I did see the recent one you did of Glenn Greenwald, and it's like you can know that he's gonna see this and that little nerve in his head's gonna hit.
Yeah,
He's gonna hit through the block, and I'm like, hey, it's not your fault. You're just like
yeah.
I said, you're doing an interpretation of him in the current time. So if it hurts him, like so be it. But
Maybe
everyone
I have
else,
been blocked. I don't go to his page a lot. So
yeah, neither do I. And I hate to admit it, but he was somebody I think a lot of us had some sort of admiration for or
I
respect for
drew
before he went
I've
this.
drawn him in group illustrations, and this is another thing, it's kind of a slippery slope because you could like I've
Mhm.
got 102 people now. It's going to take me a while to finish it.
Yeah.
If somebody's reputation is tarnished and they did something, you know, a Virgil Texas or somebody like that, if somebody takes a turn for the worse, I have
Mhm.
time to erase you from the
Yeah.
illustration. But
Yeah.
I've done some and put it out there, and then within a couple weeks, it's like, oh wow, there's like 3 or 4 people in here that are just horrible people now.
Yeah. You
Like,
kinda
what happened?
yeah, you kinda see the current from the past. It's like
Yeah, I want to do a George Lucas and go back and start like touching it
yeah,
up. And one
yeah.
time I took somebody out and put somebody else in. I don't think anybody noticed, but I wanted
I
to
don't
repost it, and I was like, I can't do it with this person, so I'll swap them
yeah.
out.
Yeah, yeah. So that current picture or the current photo of all those like leftist group, the leftist people, as I call them. So are you gonna you're gonna ink it and then you're just gonna color it in, and how long do you think that'll take you
I
precisely?
th- I think, well, normally I could do it in a weekend.
Mm.
Um, you know, 12 to 18 hours, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually stay up pretty late doing that stuff. So, it'll be like, oh, it's 2 a.m. I'll go to bed. But I think in this case, I'll do it a couple hours a week on the live stream. And you never know how it's going to go. Sometimes it's like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, it's going way faster than I thought. Sometimes it's taking longer. I think my plan, though, is to be done with it before the election, the midterms.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere around the second or third week of November, or second week of November, and then I think I just figured out I'm gonna have to take a week off for something, and so I will most likely end up. I want it done before then,
Mm.
so I think I have to take off third week in November from the live
That's,
stream. So I'll have it
that's
done in by then. So a month, a little more.
yeah. I do have to ask, if somebody wanted like a copy of that, would you be willing to sell it to them for a good price, or you know what I mean?
Um, So I'm looking into that. It's always a little touchy because
Sorry.
people, well, but like people could be like, don't sell a picture of me, you know?
Right.
But in
Well,
this case, it's a big group of people, so it's not really
yeah.
of you.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm doing a picture of one of them on a
Mhm,
shirt and selling
mhm.
that. So that would be a little different. So I might have
Yeah.
some leeway there. It's
I guess I
51 inches wide, so I have to find someone who can do it at least at a 36-inch wide scale. And then, would you buy something 36 inches wide? Like, where would you even put that?
well, I guess I should rephrase, like, if somebody who saw the picture, like, the big picture of all of us and, like, wanted a personal copy to frame and, like, display on their wall of something like that, where, like, that's the kinda thing that
Oh,
would.
I've researched it. I know exactly where I would sell it online. It might not be super cheap, but it's not going to be like out of reach expensive either. But
Yeah,
it's really the scale. I've got to work out the scale and the proportions, and I think I have. Um, But yeah, if I make it available, it'll be the kind of thing anyone could buy.
yeah, yeah. It's just one of those things where I like, man, this would be something that I would like to own more as
Some
a
people have been
personal
saying that.
possession, you know?
People are like, I want to buy, like Lance of the Surfs.
Mhm.
He said he on his live stream, he's like, it's gonna go right there. He's like, I'm gonna buy it and put it right there. And I was like, you don't have enough room right there to put
Yeah,
it, so I'm gonna have to do different sizes of it. So, but then if you get too small, everyone's real tiny, and then what's the
yeah,
point? So
yeah.
we'll see. We'll
I
see.
I think I have enough wall space. I mean, as you can kinda see, I mean, you see the Beatles poster. I mean,
Yeah.
I could probably move some stuff around to make a big display, and I could just, like, show my uncle who lives in town, like, he sees the pictures, like, "Hey, look at that little look at probably, like, 4th from the right or whatnot, 4th from the
Yeah.
left maybe," and just be like he could look at it like, "Is that you?" I'm like, "Yep, and it's a nice likeness."
That's all I want.
Yeah. I mean, again, I can't keep it was a compliment. I was honored that you included me in that picture, and I was flattered. I was like, "You got it down right. There was nothing wrong about it. It was exactly the way I looked."
One
So,
and like look who you're around, you know?
yeah.
So that's the other thing is like I want Joshua Kahn Russell and I want Big Waz to look at that and
Mhm.
go, who's in between us? Oh, let me
Yeah.
check him out. And
Yeah.
that gives you a leg up. So those are the decisions I made along the way was like, it's not like somebody was criticizing me and saying like, "Oh, you just drew all the celebrities." And I'm like, "Not really." I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of people in there who they're not celebrities by any
They're
means. I mean,
they're
you
they're
could say, "Oh, Kyle Kalinski's a celebrity." Okay, in certain circles, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it was the opposite with me. I was just honored to be around people that I do know on a somewhat personal level. And as
Yeah.
I was looking around, I was able to pick out and say, "Hey, I know that person or I know that person and we're friends," kind of thing. I was just honored to be what would be known in the inner circle that we're both in is the cool kids club,
Yeah.
more or less. It's the cool kids club.
the
It was
and
an art form.
well, and the Cool Kids Club just happens to be a bunch of people who are not afraid to speak truth to power. And
Yep.
that is the core for the illustration. It's like you
Yeah.
can look, you can listen to all of them, you can listen to half of them, you can listen to one of them.
Yeah.
They are each in their own way going to tell you something worth listening to. You don't
Yeah.
have to totally agree. It doesn't mean it wasn't
Oh
worth
yeah.
saying.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, my big thing is the union, the supporting the striking workers and the labor unions and whatnot. Of which I have to also, I mean, we're kind of running out of time, but I was reading a book uh, by Tom Cito about the animation union, and there were like it was like different periods of like the Hanna Barbera era, and of course the infamous uh, Disney strike of the 40s, if you're familiar, of how
Hmm.
the workers kind of Art Babbitt is a name I'm now familiar with, who was a democratic socialist, and he, famously uh, walked out and participated in the picketing of the striking workers at the Disney studio for higher pay. I mean, that's just one of the things that I'm speaking out for. It's one of my biggest advocacies, if you will, of raising the minimum wage and supporting again striking workers and allowing them to like because they need a better wage to feed their families and live a decent life, m- pretty much more or less. So that's the one thing I've been trying my best to speak out of. And other things like I'm just a pop culture aficionado. Again,
Well,
big Kevin Smith fan, so I could do a whole podcast about
you
uh,
should.
Kevin Smith movies. I'm still trying to work that out, but you know,
Well, I think artists could always get paid more. Everyone could, but especially artists. I think that my experience as a long-term commercial artist, I mean, since 99, I've been a
mhm,
commercial artist. And dabbled before that, but professionally as a career since 99. I think
mhm,
that more often than not, and this is sometimes not necessarily a bad thing, but it's the fact is a lot of people, I don't like the term non-artist, but in terms of like having a role at your job, some people are the artists and some people aren't. So the people who aren't, that are in charge of the artist or in charge of their tasks and their productivity will often use them as a glove that they can just put their hand in and, oh, now I'm the artist, or,
mhm,
oh, I can make you change this thing,
mhm,
or I have creative control although I'm not quote unquote the creative. And I
mhm,
think that is often looked at as that in that way, artists are often looked at as a tool and not a partner. And I think that partners get paid more. And I think that they should be a partner and they should actually have a level of authority in their role that they do not have for whatever reason. It's
right,
like, oh, I'm not an artist or a graphic designer, but I have Adobe Photoshop. I can do
mhm,
what you do. No, you
yeah,
can't. That's those applications and those tools make you a better artist. They do not necessarily make you an artist.
mhm,
So there's a lot to know and learn and a lot of experience that comes with being a graphic designer or a commercial artist, especially in animation because that's grueling, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
definitely,
from what I hear, I haven't like looked into this too greatly, but from what I hear about people who are making Marvel movies now and the amount of turmoil that they go through and the hours they put in to produce the effects and the animation and stuff is just unfair, skewed, and
mhm,
doesn't pay enough. And I've heard that even if it does pay enough, like some of these guys are like, "Oh, I get paid fine. I'm just not going to do that." right? Because it's like
Yeah.
throwing out all of your work and asking you to start over. It's asking
Yeah.
for like 4 versions of something so that they can pick and choose what they want instead of saying you're the artist, you're the expert. Like, let me ask you this. If you go to
Mhm.
get your oil changed, do you
Yeah.
tell the mechanic you want to see a couple different versions? No. You say change my oil, he does it, and you leave,
There's,
right?
like,
After
only
you pay.
one. Yeah, it's like there's only
Yeah.
one
So
version of oil to change.
so if you hire me to be the artist, you've hired me because of my style and my ability and my turnaround and the price is right and all this stuff. And so if you're like, oh, I need to see 4 or 5 versions, you're going to pay for that.
Yeah.
But if it becomes like an unreasonable amount of work for me, then it's not worth either of our time because my work's going to suffer and you're never going to see the best results, right?
Right.
And you're not going to have the best product. So people really do need to show um, they need to pay artists and animators more, but they also need to show them a lot more respect in terms of their exact role.
Right.
If it's a hierarchy or whatever, they should be way higher up the ladder than in a bullpen taking shots from management through 3 other people. It's like tell them to tell them this, and then it finally gets down to you and you're like, well, as the artist, I have a whole bunch of reasons or more questions or reasons why I don't think that's the best route. How come I wasn't in the meeting where this decision was made?
Right.
And I think you'll hear a lot of artists talk about that. And so there's a lot of stuff that needs to change. But at the end of the day, you're making art and that's not the worst job.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it's still like, gratifying.
Yeah. I mean, there's more worse jobs out there. I
Yeah.
mean, you're self-employed. It's the good thing about the kind of line of work that we do equally is that we're self-employed. We dictate our own schedules. We're not working from some like
Well,
big
yeah.
hierarchy
And
anymore
so I think
like it used to
if
be.
better wages and working conditions are achievable through a union, by all means,
Yeah.
get it going. If you can do it on your own contract, okay, that's good too. So I'm not anti-union. I'm very pro-union, but
Same.
I'm
Very much
I'm just like with any organization, government, union, whatever it is, if it's corrupt, that needs to be fixed.
so.
And
Yeah.
so corruption is possible in unions. So I
Mm.
would say, like, if you're joining a union or starting a union, you want to make sure that you have a voice in that union, not
Exactly.
just,
Yeah.
not just, oh, I need to benefit from a union, so I'll join. Get involved, be
Yeah.
involved. You can only benefit from that.
Yeah. Get
I've
involved.
never I've never been in one, so I don't really know.
Yeah. Neither
Yeah.
have I. But that's like get involved, do your homework, do your research, and do the best you can in that union.
Speak
And
truth to power. Keep them honest. Ask
there
for
you go.
transparency.
There you go. There you go. Words could be a better. No better words can be said than.
Right.
Um. What else? What else? There's like so many things I could just ask you
You got a
while I
quick
still
one?
have. Yeah.
Like a
Like, well, I guess I have to say, like, who is like your? I mean, because you probably like they're all so diverse as far as like hosting wise and commentator wise, but like, who is your absolute favorite? Because I try to have that. Like with me, it was the Young Turks, and it got me sort of in this media bubble that we're in. So I guess who has to be your general favorite of like media
so
host?
it
You know what I'm
changed.
saying?
It does. It like sometimes I'll watch one show by itself and then I'll watch 3 going at once on the
Mhm.
screen. And the one I like the most I'll just watch by themselves. And that changes for whatever reason. But what I've noticed is that these shows will steadily become more and more polished. And
Yeah.
that's fine. That I understand. That makes a lot of sense. But
Mhm.
that's not always, I came to you when you weren't polished. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kind of like that version better. Like I say, you give me options, I'll have a preference, right?
Yeah.
And so the one show who has always stayed true and has just been pure from the beginning and only gets better without trying to like do a studio or get more polished. They're just real and I think raw is the right word. It would be Above It All with Andrea Rovinsky.
Yep,
She will
she's
not change for nobody.
mm,
And it's like I say, you don't have to agree with everything these people say, and she's real
yeah,
tell it like it is, and she will not pull punches. She will
yeah,
go off on her chat, whatever it is. But it's the same as when I first started watching 2 or 3 years ago.
yeah,
And it like I say, it's gotten better
mhm,
because because she does what she does better and better. But
mm,
it's not like, oh, and the show is still out of her bedroom every day at 10 a.m.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's I love it, and
yeah,
it's as crazy and off the rails as it was when I first started watching, and that took some getting used to. I'm not gonna
yeah,
lie. I was like, "Whoa, what
yeah.
is what's
What
going
is
on here every day?" But
what is
I
this?
don't
But I
know.
like it. I like it, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, and it's a younger voice than
Mm,
me. Like the whole reason I started watching was like I need to watch what younger people are saying because as a younger person, I was always like, I don't care what older. Why don't older people listen to me more? And so I make a point to listen to people like your age as
mhm,
much as I can and younger people than me, as well as my age and older. I want to get the spectrum. But I
mhm,
was listening to her because I was like, I need to know the issues that she's talking about, but also her point of view. Um, whether she's talking about, any of the range of things that go on, but from her personal point of view.
yeah,
That's what's important to me,
yeah,
and it's entertaining as hell. And I just think Andrea has one of those voices that I could stop watching and tune in 5 years, and it's going to be the same.
yeah, couldn't agree
She's
more.
not she's not changing for nobody. That's how
She's
I put it. So I love it.
I agree with you 100%, maybe even 1,000%. She's one of the best out there,
I
and
gotta watch that show every day.
I try to. Again, I'm, in school, so between classes, I do try to watch, like, the end. If I get close to the end, I tend to watch. Like, she does, like, really good movie reviews, or
Yeah.
she's one
No.
of the
Yeah. I
people
know.
who do
Yeah.
real good movie reviews, and she's very thorough, she's very honest, she's, like, she knows what she's talking about, and it's the same way with, Movie Night Extravaganza with Forrest
Yeah.
Miller and Andrew World and Christina Oakes and Conan Neutron and that group. They're really good at telling you a movie, telling you what they feel about, tell you what they like and didn't like, and they're just brutally honest. And
Well, and
they're
they know the subject matter so well. Like
yeah,
they really know what they're talking about. And I would say if there's like a fairly new Twitch streamer that I've been watching
mm,
every night that they're on, $27.
yep,
He's Scottish, which it's always easier to listen to the news when they have like a pleasant accent like that. I love the Scottish bro, but
yeah,
also he is hilarious and he mixes it up and it's not all like doom and gloom, and he does a
yeah,
lot of funny stuff too. Just how Andrea does movie reviews to like kind of snap you out of it at the end of the show. He'll
yeah,
do stuff like that
yeah,
too. So I suggest that. But
yeah.
but yeah,
I've
man, there's a lot new ones every day.
I've seen $27 well, I've seen him. He is 5 out of 5 for me. If I can
Oh,
go any
great. Yeah,
higher,
see.
I could go like 10 out of 10, but usually the ratio of stars on a typical review is like 5 out of 5, or
Cool.
it could
Yeah.
change. But
Yeah.
but like for me, it's all diverse and it's all like coming from the same point of view, even if it's different. If you
Mhm.
get what I'm saying, like
Oh, yeah, totally.
I've I've been watching several different leftist YouTube, Twitch people for the last 2 years, and I don't always agree, and sometimes I do agree, but the good thing about it is it's diverse, and, it got me doing this show. I keep mentioning the Young Turks, you know, watching them as a high school sophomore in 2008 led me to doing this show, at least for now, part-time, and hopefully once I get my education out of the way, full-time. And, I hope to
Mhm.
grow and evolve and learn a lot more than I already know now. But, right, but still
Good luck.
have that same thank you. Still have that same political leftist progressive point of view that I'm still at with, maybe have like have some new like experiences and whatnot because every day I'm reading, I'm learning, I'm watching new content, and there is like a point where I'm kind of like, is this, I'm always trying to do like, what I do with political candidates is same way with I did with Bernie Sanders is I, did my due diligence. I did my background research on him and found that he has pretty much been consistently on point
Oh yeah,
his whole life. And that's the same with Andrea and Anna Kasparian and
good point.
and movie night. They've just been thumbs up. So all right, so let's see here. We don't have a lot of questions, so I
That's
guess
okay. We pretty much talked about everything.
yeah, I'm pretty sure there will be people watching this post live stream that'll give us some good comments.
Great.
So with that said, I we've gone over our hour limit, which is fantastic. I usually do this for an hour and then I get kind of anxious and then I'm like, "Oh god, I got to get out of here." But no, actually it was a pleasure having you.
Yeah, thanks. I
Been a
think so too.
I hope you don't mind the comments and the flattery and the positive feedback. I mean, again,
Oh
it's
yeah,
been all positive for me and
great.
just I love your work. I mean,
Thanks.
I also grew up. I was a big Garfield fan, a big fan
Oh
of the
yeah, totally.
Peanuts,
Yeah,
and I
me too.
love the fact that you have interpretations of the Peanuts characters, like
Yeah. Thanks.
that's a big positive because of course your respect and tribute to the late great Michael Brooks, seriously missed. Rest in power to him. I've been wanting to get one of those T-shirts and those
They're not
mugs.
available anymore.
Yeah, I know.
I might have to bring them back, but for now
Yeah,
they're not available.
because I know Andrea has one, and I'm just like, oh,
She
I
has
just wish.
two.
Oh, she's only watched. I've only seen her wear one, but I've seen like a lot of other people on Twitter, like Zeke Gonzalez, wear your merch, and I'm just like, where can I get some of that? I wish there was just a way you could take like donate like take cash donations because long story, I don't have a debit card. I'm disabled, so um, you know, hopefully when something like that comes along, I could keep my eye out, keep my eyes and ears open.
Yeah, well, I might have to put it back out there to combat the fraud because
Yeah.
some people are putting it back out there criminally, and I'm gonna have to make it available legally so people can
Right.
can
Oh,
get it
so
from the good source.
are there like people like doing copycats
Oh yeah,
of that
oh
kind of stuff? Oh man,
yeah,
that
like
is
it's insane. Like I'm trying to combat it right now, and it seems so hopeless. But
it's it's like you see like you go on some random website and you just see that like that's not me. That's just somebody trying to be
yeah,
who I am, and it's just like
there's one company with like 36 websites selling it, and they say they're
wow.
all a little different, and you can tell it's not English is not their first language because of the way it's worded, or it's like an algorithm that just picks stuff up and threw it together like an AI.
Mhm.
But it says J.R. Jackson and Letterhack
And you're just like,
shirt or
yeah.
tee. And I'm like, what? Jared, okay, yeah, he wore it and promoted it. And so you can see how it maybe kind of just picked up the algorithm of different
Mhm.
things that were said on Twitter or something. And
Mhm.
but it's on like so many websites now. It's like, I don't know how I'm going to combat that.
Yeah.
Just keep
It's
telling people, if you get it from me, the proceeds go to charity. If
right.
you get it from anybody else, I doubt it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's like it's genuine when it comes from the original.
yeah. And
The
with
art.
permission from his
Oh yeah.
sister. So,
And it's like you're gonna have to probably. I mean, I hope it doesn't come to that, but you're gonna have to like put some legal recourse in there. Speaking of legal recourse with Elon Musk,
yeah.
it's like you're gonna have to take some like, hey guys, stop. I know you're
Yeah.
just trying to pay homage, but it's disrespectful to the work I've done, and it's not really. And
Well,
it's not really interpretive.
Without going into detail, I'll put it this way: I am not just letting it happen. So I'm taking
Good,
action. There's
good,
all kinds of stuff going on, but it's like
good point. Good.
I don't have lawyers, so it's
Yeah.
sort of doing whatever I
Well,
can.
well, I hope that it stops because that's just again, there's just it just gets into my skin when somebody is brilliant, and I hope you don't mind me using that word. Someone as brilliant
Starting to
as
sound like my
yourself.
mom.
Well, someone is that has taken the effort to do what you do, and somebody takes out there and just plagiarizes. And
Yeah,
coming from the educational college background, I know a lot about plagiarism and
yeah.
how bad of an effect it could be
Shows
on
how
someone.
popular it is, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Must be good art.
So yeah. So I guess wrapping it up, I guess this is the point where you have to like plug where you are.
Yeah, and all my Redbubble merch store and all that. It's all there on the Linktree post on my Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. It's all out there. And now I'm inviting people to my Discord. So that's a new link that I just added. Just
Which
I don't
I'm
know
now
what's gonna.
part of.
What's
I
that?
I'm now part of your
Oh
Discord.
yeah, right on. Yeah, great.
So,
So I don't know what's gonna happen with Twitter, and
yeah,
Facebook is Facebook. So
yeah,
Discord seems like a place where we could all meet and hang out and talk about art and politics and whatnot. So,
yeah.
so I'm trying to promote that more. So look for that link as well. And cwsbookstore.com. Then search the Letterhack. My book will come right up. It's $10. It's just volume 1 of the sketchbook. There'll be more. And when this isn't available, I always think it's kind of punk rock to not make it available again. So get it while you can. And
'Cause it'll be gone.
yeah, and it's going well. I mean, I'm selling stuff every day, and it ships pretty quickly too. So people already have them in hand. So if you do have it in hand, leave me a review.
Yeah, and donate to charity as well when you purchase the sketchbook.
Oh, the sketchbook is in my pocket, but that does make it avail, or that gives me the ability to do things for charity, like the Michael Brooks shirt and
Yep.
prints. All that stuff went to charity, and anytime, and it's not the last time I'm going to do something charitable. So the
Well,
sketchbook just gives me a chance to be able to make a little pocket money so I can do that kind of stuff
yeah. Well, it's also important to give back. If you're gonna do something
every
that's great,
time. Yeah.
you have to give back to the community and support
Yeah.
the needy, basically.
That's why
Um,
all the stuff I put online to promote people is just generally totally free,
yeah, yeah,
whether
and,
they ask for it or not.
yeah, and as far as with the Discord, like, I'm new to it as well. I feel like that's gonna be the new thing, like, still
Could
active
be.
on Twitter and, I mean, you and I both know how the discourse is, how the algorithm is being
Yeah.
in the again, the community that we're in.
It's rough.
But, with all that, it's like we have hope. I have
Yep.
hope some way.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Strackbein. Is it Strackbein or Strackbane or however do you wanna say? I'll
It
just
all
call it
works, but I say STRACKBEIN, but
yeah.
I have my own family members don't, so whatever.
I'll just call you Matt, or I'll just call you Matt the Letterhack, which I
Okay,
actually
that works.
which I actually found out a definition. Letterhack also means, if you're a fan of something, like a movie, a
Yeah.
TV, book. That's actually a
They
new thing.
generally are, pretty hardcore fans about whatever it is they're writing about.
Like, I'm a hardcore Letterhack of Kevin Smith. I'm just gonna say that right now.
Yeah.
Just ask Forrest Miller and J. Andrew World. They know. I've talked my ear off about it to
Yeah.
the point where they're just like, "God, John, do you really have to? Is this really necessary?" No, no, just kidding. They're good people. They're good friends of
Yeah, I
mine.
like those
And
guys.
they're awesome. All right, Matt, thanks for stopping by. I hope we
Thank
can do
you. I
this again
appreciate it.
sometime.
Sure.
Maybe next time I'll get more than one viewer, but, I need to kinda
It's
be
always a
active more
replay.
also. Yeah. I also have to be active more on streaming. I'm been trying to do this more. I took a little bit of a break because I had, surgery recently. I'm fine now, but
Good. Good to
anyway,
hear. Yeah.
great to see you and,
You too.
great to meet you in person. So,
Yeah, same.
all right.
Thanks for
Thanks.
everything.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. See ya.
See you. All right. So that was Matt Strackbein. I'm just gonna call him Strackbane. The letter hack. You can find all his Twitter, his all his stuff will be posted in the link to the YouTube in the post production portion of this show. Don't have very many comments, so I'm just going to say um, I will see you next time when there will be another show. So take care of yourself, be kind to one another. Left is best, and I will see you hopefully very soon. Peace.